Sexual self. Sexuality comes together with the physical and physiological changes that happen to our bodies, especially during adolescent years. In this video, we will be talking about defining sexuality, the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation, and the different sexual myths.
In our group discussion, we define sexuality as our preferences with our own sexual or emotional feelings towards different people, which means it makes us a person having a certain liking to a specific characteristic of an individual. Thus, it is important to denote that a person can be attractive to a certain individual but not to a different human being, which allows diversity to a person's sexual identity. With that being said, we are created differently, and beliefs have a huge impact on one's sexual identity. Some communities itself won't allow any undesirable sexual identities to thrive in their society, which is why it is hard for some to express when it comes to their own abilities.
The difference between gender identity and sexual orientation. So, a lot of people mistakenly perceive gender identity and sexual orientation as the same concept. For instance, if someone is transgender, several individuals immediately presume that they must also be gay. However, it is not the case because there is a fine line between these two concepts that we must all understand. First, gender identity is basically who we are as a person or what we are assigned at birth. It could also be how a person wants to label himself, considering that there are lots of genders aside from male and female that people can identify themselves. On the other hand, sexual orientation involves our feelings or attraction towards other people. It is who an individual is interested with as well as who they want to date or be intimate with. A YouTuber named Brendan Jordan explained these two concepts in the most simple way. According to him, sexuality is who you go to bed with, and gender identity is who you go to bed as. In other words, sexual orientation specifically applies to who you want to be with, while gender identity is who you are.
It is also important to recognize the influence other people have on our beliefs regarding sexuality. We may not have noticed it, but these influences have trickled down to even how we understand our sexual behavior. With this, we will be presenting different kinds of sexual myths and we will debunk it by research articles.
Myth 1. You cannot get pregnant the first time you have sex. It is possible for one to get pregnant the first time they have sex. If a female who is already ovulating participates in sexual activities, most especially vaginal sex with the opposite sex, she may or may not get pregnant regardless if it is her first or not, since pregnancy happens when the male partner's sperm fertilizes the female partner's egg.
Myth number 2. Oral sex is safer compared to vaginal sex. When considering the risk of pregnancy as a factor for safety, getting pregnant from oral sex is virtually impossible, making oral sex safer than vaginal sex in that context. However, oral sex has the same risks of vaginal sex in the context of acquiring sexually transmitted infections or STIs and sexually transmitted diseases or STDs, because they only require contact with the infected surface to transmit the disease. According to the Journal of Global Infectious Diseases, there are 3 ways infections can be transmitted through oral sex: cunnilingus or oral vaginal contact, fellatio or oral penile contact, and analingus or oral anal contact. Gonorrhea can only be transmitted through fellatio, while hepatitis A and E, bowel organisms and worms, and intestinal parasites can only be transmitted through analingus. However, non-specific urethritis can be transmitted through both fellatio and cunnilingus. Furthermore, HIV, syphilis, chlamydia, herpes, and human papillomavirus or genital warts and hepatitis B can all be transmitted through all 3 kinds of oral sex. This makes it astonishingly clear that oral sex is not safe without the necessary precautions, and is not a safe alternative to vaginal sex. In fact, HPV or human papillomavirus is the most common sexually transmitted infection, with about 79 million Americans currently infected with HPV. and about 14 million people becoming newly infected each year. Although in most cases HPV goes away on its own and does not cause any health problems, in the rare case that it does not go away, it can cause health problems like genital warts and even cancer of the cervix, the genitalia, and the throat.
Myth 3. Peeing or washing after sex will prevent pregnancy. This myth was debunked by an article, Healthline, by Rachel N. Urinating or washing after sex does not prevent pregnancy. Although it is not necessary, it is helpful in preventing urinary tract infections or UTI. Peeing after sex is not a bad thing, but certain people could be more likely to benefit from decreased UTI risk but not from pregnancy. Releasing pee from your urethra will not flush anything out of your vagina nor washing it. Peeing after sexual intercourse can help flush out UTI, but a sexually transmitted infection will not protect you from acquiring it. In order to wash bacteria away from the urethra, you pee after sex. Using a condom anytime is the only way to reduce the chance of STI.
Myth number 4. Condoms are reusable. Reusing condoms lower its effectiveness, possibly leading to pregnancy during vaginal sex. Reusing condoms is also a massive health risk and incredibly non-sanitary. The risk of acquiring bacterial infections in your sexual organs by reusing condoms is very much high since it is a single-use item and new ones should be used for every sex act. Washing them compromises the integrity and effectiveness because oil-based soaps can degrade latex, causing the condom to tear, which can lead to pregnancy. And also, the latex can irritate your skin. In short, the most effective way to use condoms is to use them only once every time you have vaginal, oral, and anal sex, and wearing them the whole time from start to finish.
Myth number 5. You cannot get HIV from getting a tattoo or body piercing. HIV is transmitted not only through unprotected sexual intercourse, but also from transfusion of contaminated blood and sharing of contaminated needles. Therefore, you could catch the virus from getting a tattoo or body piercing if the needles were not sterilized and were used on someone with HIV. However, there have been no cases of these happening because of the strict health protocols that occur within professional shops that apply these services, so the likelihood of this happening is very unlikely.
Adolescents believe in sex myths, which also influence their attitudes and behaviors towards sex. Indeed, a more structured education and clarification of values upheld by the individual are needed in order to complement and correct some of the traditional socializations into heterosexuality. In conclusion, adolescents are vulnerable at different times in their development. They need to be equipped with skills to manage the different changes they experience, since it is important in developing a healthier sexual self. Thanks for watching!